So we're going to be spending just a few minutes here today talking about the Case 500. This is a 25 foot wide, 7.5 inch spacing, T version with a hopper on top. And we've actually talked a little bit about the 500 Case series before. I think we can put a link in for that. And I'm not going to go over a lot of the same principles that we discussed last time. So for the most part, this is some new stuff. So since we made the last video, we've seen a number of advantages to the Case 500. The biggest one is the amount of terrain following ability as a result of the parallel linkage. So comparing and contrasting this opener to the John Deere, we have some advantages and maybe some challenges to address. But number one, both the Case 500 and the John Deere share an 18-inch disc blade. They both operate at approximately a 7-degree angle to forward to create a seed slot wide enough to place seed down into. The Case blade is orientated almost vertically. The Deere one is raked backwards, opposite way to like a disc harrow in a field. It's raked backwards about 2 or 3 degrees. And last week in Kansas, we were doing field demos comparing the John Deere to the Case. And we did find that the Case, definitely without any doubt in the world, the Case cuts better. It hairpins less because of the vertical orientation of the blade. Even with similar down pressure per opener, we're finding that the Case does cut better in harder soils, in heavy residue. It hairpins less, but at the cost of, or at the benefit of better cutting, it tends to disturb more soil. And we saw that last week in Kansas when we were running in loose surface soil. This was moving quite a lot of soil. Now up here in Canada where we are now, probably not an issue. If you're in western Kansas wanting to conserve surface residue that's very fragile on top of dry soil, you don't want to be burying it, you don't want to accelerate its decomposition because you want it there to stop wind erosion and to conserve moisture, etc. Okay? A couple of other observations. Still don't have a firming wheel, although a Keaton seed firmer is available from Exapter in Kansas to actually do a better job pressing seeds down. We saw in Kansas last week that even though this seeder was making a clearly defined seed slot and placing seeds fairly well to the bottom of the seed slot, in Kansas last week, the closing wheel, which is this one, the standard one, tended to be dropping loose soil in. In fact, some of the loose soil was collapsing into the seed slot, and as a result of that, we tended to see a seed in the bottom of a clearly formed seed slot, loose soil collapsing in around that seed, and then the rear closing wheel that doesn't do a very good job in some conditions was just throwing more dry soil around the seed. In those conditions, I think the emergence is going to be pretty marginal. If you're planting in conditions closer to this with more moisture, it's not going to be an issue because I think moisture is going to be adequate enough for emergence. The only other comment I'll make, still not closing very well. The standard wheel, it's running too straight, almost straight when viewed from behind, and it's just not doing a very good job closing the seed slot. Okay, about the only way we can address that is to swap this wheel out for some aftermarket wheels that tend to have notches around the outside or spades around the outside. They generally do a better job pulling that sidewall together and closing the seed slot. Despite running this seeder in the medium position, some of them on the high position, you can see here fairly well that it's just not closing the seed slot in these soils. In an area right now in Canada, planting winter wheat, if you can't close the seed slot better than that, I'm just going to suggest winter hardiness is going to be a huge issue. So it's cutting good, we're placing seeds into the bottom of the seed slot, it's just not closing the seed slot very well in these higher moisture conditions. Again, drier soils with a little crumble on top, it closes the slot better, but then you got the issue of seeds being placed into loose soil and then no seed to soil contact with moisture. Okay, the only piece of the puzzle that might help, I did mention the Keaton seed firmers you can add in there. If you take the closing wheel off, you add this little coupler, you wind this into place on the arm. As you rotate this coupler, you can see this face on the end of the coupler is angled, and it enables you to adjust the closing wheel angle of any closing wheel, including this one, but we don't find that this closing wheel works very well in higher moisture soils similar to what we're showing here. So by adding the coupler, it does give you the opportunity to add any kind of closing wheel and by increasing that closing wheel angle to 6, 7, 8 degrees, Deere's are 7, so somewhere around 7 degrees, the same degree as the disc opener, you can close the slot a lot better by increasing the closing wheel angle. So in a nutshell, good seeder, good cutting, a lot of terrain following ability, almost 20 inches via the parallel linkage. Needs a seed firmer. In conditions just like this, it needs a better closing system. That's not going to work for a lot of producers.